Okay, we'll make a start. Thank you again for those who've connected. Anybody dialing in later, we'll be sending a recording of this as well, and actually to those who attend, I'll also send you a link afterwards. Today's webinar, we're going to talk about ransomware. There's a lot of issues in the last 2 weeks, especially with the WannaCry variant. I'll also talk about SMBv1, which is the root of the problem when it comes to this ransomware. To talk some about operational issues like how do you bandwidth use in K12 networks, and how can you find out what users, what applications are using up your bandwidth on your networks. If there's any questions, there is a chat panel, should be on your GoToMeeting. You just type in your question in there. Type in at any stage. There's a Q&A section at the end, but as questions come in, I'm happy to answer them. They could be anything general, from typing network equipment, trying to get visibility yourself, or anything topics that I'm covering today. As mentioned, my name is Dara Delaney. I'm working for Netfort. We've been around a while, since 2002. Whereas we develop network visibility solutions. Today's webinar is very much technical. I do use our own products, but you can use other products. I'm not, anything from Wireshark to other products. The methodology, the ways I take a look at the data to spot ransomware, it doesn't have to be our product. This knowledge here you can take and use in other things, for example, like Wireshark. But for my part of the demo, I will use our own product. So what do you need to monitor? So what I'm talking about today is all around visibility. How can you actually monitor your network? So I work a lot with K12 schools, and a lot of them have a hub and spoke design. Some of them are all come back to a single location. Some of them may have multiple locations, but some schools will get their internet access or services like file sharing and that back at one location, and you may have also a central, some other central headquarters for the district. So what do you need to monitor typically revolves around those. In this diagram here, there's 2 points. I'm looking at where the lines converge, and that is where I need to get monitoring set up. The monitoring I'm going to talk about today is packet capture, network traffic analysis using packet capture. So looking at this network here, I want to focus on Denver because it's got a lot of connections terminating there, and also Los Angeles. Again, you can take out your network diagram and find where your data converges. And when it comes to ransomware, the specific points that you're looking for is where your file servers are hosted. If they're in every single school, well, you're going to need visibility in every single school. But if your most important, most critical data is within your data centers, like these two here, well, they're the points I need to focus on. So when we want to monitor a network, this is the first thing I do, is take the high-level network diagram, see where my data converges. I've got 2 locations. Now I need to figure out within the location, how can I set up monitoring? Spanner mirror ports are a network goldmine. I don't know if you're familiar with the term span or mirror ports, but all managed switches support them. They're not inline, you don't need to impact the network speeds, and you can gain access to flow and packet payload information. Some switches such as Cisco, they actually support Vlan monitoring. So one of the problems in the past with packet capture is you have to monitor ports, you have to kind of figure out what's connected where. But don't worry, if you use it like Cisco, and there are other switch vendors, they actually support VLAN monitoring. So you can actually pick a VLAN, like your server VLAN, and say, I want to monitor that, and the switch will automatically send a copy of any packets tagged with, let's say, VLAN 100. It's sent to what's called your span or mirror port. Asterisk there, you've always many switches. If you don't want to use the span feature, you can actually use a network tap as well. A link here, it'll be in the follow-up. There's a Wireshark wiki, really good switch reference there. I think I have it loaded up on my browser. There it is here. So on Wireshark wiki, they have all the documentation for all the popular switches, anything from Cisco, HP, you got it there. And if you pick your switch vendor, it goes in and actually shows you for each of those switches what are the commands you need to set up a span or mirror port. So again, these ports are goldmine, and they're really, really useful if you have worries about ransomware or any sort of security issues span reports are fantastic data source. So remember we looked at our hub and spoke design. Well, within the data center, the next thing is, well, what do I plug into? Typically, you're plugging into your core switch. You want to find where your servers, especially your file servers, where they're connected, typically core, but wherever they're plugged in, that's where you set up your span and mirror report. I recommend that if ransomware is your worry, you monitor your file servers, but critically you also need to monitor your internet gateway. WannaCry, we'll talk about more later, had a different type of approach when it came to infecting systems. It wasn't just a bad email or attachment. The ransomware also looked for networks where port 445 was open, and the ransomware actually came into a network via ports like the Microsoft one's 445 open. So ransomware, you must monitor your internet gateway. It can be the place where you'll find the initial how your network was attacked, and also any payload information that's leaving your network. So minimum, you need to monitor your file servers, internet gateway, and have it all going to your span or mirror port here. In my case, I've got my LanGuardian connected to that. I'll talk about our product in a second, but it's connected here. But you can plug any system into this port which supports packet capture. You can even plug a laptop in running Wireshark, but you can get a bit overwhelmed with the amount of data. But that's your data source. That's a gold mine of information. On larger networks, this is the type of approach you can take. You can, remember the diagram we had, it was Denver, we also had Los Angeles, so we can have a second span port set up at that location. Data is collected there by our probe and is sent back to be stored on our central manager. Again, it doesn't have to be our product. There's other things you can plug in here, but our approach, you can have a probe in this location and in the headquarters, and all information then is centrally managed, or all the reporting is done via what we call a central manager. So, I mean, the key takeaway I want you to, from these slides, is that packet capture is a fantastic data resource, and it can be deployed in a network of any size, whether you're a small network or a network spread across multiple data centers. There are options out there where you can capture data from many different places and bring it all together. So from one single console, you can see what's going on across your entire school district. You typically don't need to be monitoring packets in locations, or let's say a school where all there is the students and staff and maybe a domain controller. There's nothing really to be learned locally there, because all of the activity, whether it's cloud applications or going back services hosted at your main data center, you're going to pick that up at your internet gateway or within the data center. So don't worry about having to put these probes all over the place. Although we have customers who've actually put their own little boxes in the schools if they needed to do some local troubleshooting. But the critical one is to make sure you're monitoring file servers and you're monitoring your internet gateway. So final slide, I'm definitely not going to bore you with PowerPoint today, but just want to, for our own product, LanGuardian, it's a traffic analysis and visibility platform. What makes ours a bit different, it focuses a lot on users, what they're doing, both real-time and historical, and you can download this and then deploy it on VMware, Hyper-V as a virtual machine, or you can install it on a standalone piece of equipment. Plugs into a span port, as you saw earlier on. And again, the beauty about this approach, not just for ourselves with packet capture, is that you don't need to install any agents, any client software on your end devices, not on your servers, not on your wireless devices, nothing. The student comes in with an iPad and there's some issue, there's something on it running, scanning your network. Monitoring the core would pick that activity up. So packet capture is a agentless way of seeing what people are doing on your network. Think of packet capture like the CCTV, the cameras for your network. In the physical world, when we want to secure our network or secure our buildings, we put up barriers, we put up gates like a firewall. In the physical world, we have cameras looking at the gates going into locations that we want to protect, because if somebody climbs over a gate, we need to know how they got in. Same thing with packet capture and firewalls. There are lots of really good firewalls out there today, But if something gets in, or if your firewall breaks down, or if it's under load and you can't access the log files, you need a camera watching what's happening on your network. So like in the physical world, a packet capture or visibility tool like LanGuardian are your eyes on your network 24/7. So let's get into the use cases that I spoke about, what we have in the webinar invite. Sorry, just move this off to a different page. And the first item I want to cover is the WannaCry ransomware variant and how can you detect it on your network. So for my example here, I'm using our LanGuardian platform, and it's got a ransomware dashboard pre-configured. Let's just take a look at some of the elements that, or some of the data that you need to watch out for on your network that's a sure sign that there's ransomware type activity. On a regular network, if I look at a more normal one, probably this one here, just want to load up a report here which shows the file names by top file share actions. What I want to show you this first is on a normal network, this is the typical behavior, the typical way events or actions are reported. Lots of people reading files, writing files, creating files, mapping network drives, some files being deleted, some file directories. So that would be normal activity. Not on a big, this is a small network here, but the order in which these are, you usually have reads and writes and network maps near the top. That is very, very normal. That's what you'd expect on a network that's not infected with any ransomware. On a network where you have a ransomware issue, that changes. So let me go check this one here. Top file share actions. So this network here, as we can see, renames 24,000 in the last hour. So they're suddenly the most common action out there. And that's very typical of ransomware. What happens is it gets in and it starts to rename files. Now somebody said to me once, well, it's easy to detect when I have ransomware because the message pops up on my screen and it tells me all my files are encrypted. And that's true. On a very small network, let's say like a legal firm with 4 or 5 employees, you don't need a tool to know you have ransomware because the PC will have the message and everybody knows. However, larger networks, and we've seen it on school networks, the PC gets infected, the user switches off. Or they leave it on and they run away, they're afraid. They read something in the papers, they saw it on the news and they just, oh, I don't want to be blamed for this. And they leave the machine running, and we've seen it happen. So IT end up going around in circles, restoring files to get encrypted, more files get encrypted, more restores, and a lot of time gets wasted. So anything that's out there renaming, you need to be alerted. So monitoring file renames is a very useful and generic way of detecting any ransomware variant on your network. You just need a tool which monitors how many files are getting renamed. Just keep a total, and what we do then is we create a trend graph showing the frequency of file renames. So on this network here, we can see that at 18:10 today, something happened, the number of renames increased, and that dropped off. So this is very typical of a ransomware attack. Now we could set up an alert that if file renames start increasing, you get an email alert telling you got a problem, here's the client. So first tip, if you're worried about ransomware, monitor your file servers and monitor the number of renames that are occurring on all your network shares. It's very neat. It doesn't matter what variant of ransomware you got coverage there. The next, when it comes to specific ransomware attacks like WannaCry, what you need to watch out for. Now we have on our website, there's a blog section and we have an article here on how to detect the presence of WannaCry. Within here, we keep it updated. I only updated it today with some new information. WannaCry uses specific extensions when it renames files, WNRY, WCRY. So if you watch for these extensions, then you definitely have a WannaCry problem. So on my dashboard here, I've got instances here, WNRY. So I know for certain that I've got a problem with ransomware, and because of the extension here, it's the WannaCry variant. I need to find out the client. I drill down here. Here is the client associated with that. We can get username as well. I'll show you that later. But we got the client responsible here. It's renaming. This is the one that's infected. This is the server targeted, and this is the share. me just move the filters away to see it better here. And that's the share and the files that are getting renamed. So that's your first tip when it comes to WannaCry, is watch out for the extensions that it uses. All you need is monitor your file shares and watch for those. An interesting one with the WannaCry is that they had built in the pre-programmed, there was some domain names that it needed to access. Now, a security researcher spotted this and registered the domain before the virus writers could use it, so it turned it into a sinkhole. But there are a number of other domains as well. I've listed them here. To monitor the domain names, what you need to do is monitor your DNS traffic. That DNS traffic is a tremendous resource as well for what clients are trying to connect to. So if we go back to our diagram, let me just quickly flip back here. Another useful thing is to monitor your DNS servers. Now, if they're external, you're going to be monitoring them by default when you monitor your internet gateway, but monitor your internal DNS servers. And you don't need to monitor every single one. Maybe just monitor the very last one in the chain before it goes to the internet. That's the only one, because that'll pick up all of the other resolves that are happening. Because what you can do then is watch out for a specific domain like this one here. This it's a bunch of characters. That again is a sure sign you got a client that has got the ransom or WannaCry, and it's trying to phone home to this domain name here. Just show you the DNS reports. Might be, let's go for DNS clients. So if you monitor DNS traffic, you should be able to get a report like this here. What clients are on your network, what DNS servers they're using, and the one I'm interested in, you can find it here. Doesn't really matter. I've got 2 pages of them here. Gee, doesn't really matter. I can drill down on any of these guys. You see the client, the server, the time, the resolve IP, and the actual domain name. And here's my problematic one here. This is the one going to that strange domain. So it chooses, where's the DNS server? Here it is here. It uses the local DNS server. So I can see that domain name there. So that's where that information comes from. So if you're interested in monitoring ransomware, DNS traffic is a really good resource because you see those domain lookups. The next, when it comes to WannaCry, another tip, although this has been superseded, when WannaCry came out first, there was a lot of talk about Windows XP and people running around, oh, Windows XP, have we got any? And we even, on our dashboard, we have an element here which focuses on Windows XP. How many XP clients have you? For some people, they were embedded within systems like employee check-in or clock-in systems. However, this article here, which came out 22nd, yesterday, is an interesting one from Caspery Labs. 98% of WannaCry victims, according to their research, I can't say if right or wrong, but certainly because I know from looking at our customers, there are not many out there with too many XP clients. So according to Caspery Labs, 98% of WannaCry victims were running Windows 7, and they have a bit of detail here as well. So looks to have there's some evidence here to suggest that there's something to this. It wasn't an XP problem. So yes, it is useful to monitor for XP because it definitely was vulnerable for this attack. Because of, we'll come to in a second, the SMBv1 protocol. No harm in monitoring for it, but I think for some people they kind of got a bad steer. They went off looking for Windows XP, but it's a lot more broad than that, and I'll show you that later on. It's actually all Windows operating systems were vulnerable here. So we'll come to that shortly, but still no harm in checking out the XP clients. Here's another WannaCry very specific piece of data associated with WannaCry. If a machine encrypted some data, a ransom note was left on your file share, and I had this name here, please read me text with some ampersand symbols. So if you had your monitoring set up to watch out for any instance where that file is created, so when you drill down on that, then this laptop is the one that needed to be investigated because it's the one that is associated with that file name. It created the file. Now it's a read, but at some point it must have created that file name. So that one needs to be investigated. So watch out for any of these please read me text with the ampersand, sure sign of a WannaCry infection on your network. So we talked about the renames earlier on, and we have the top clients renaming. The main attack vector for WannaCry was the SMB version 1 protocol. When Microsoft released SMB version 1 way back in the early 90s, and it was the protocol for sharing files, sharing printers, Windows Pro groups type of thing. And as over the years, they developed SMB version 2, and now we're on version 3. Some time ago, Microsoft recommended that you should switch off SMBv1 because it's no longer used. In some situations, let's say if you had a Windows XP client with a Windows 2003 server, the default protocol was SMBv1. Since then, your client should auto-negotiate a higher protocol, like Windows 10 talk to 2016 server will be talking SMB version 3.11, I think, or 3.1. I can't remember, version 3. So what you need to do is root out SMBv1. But the interesting thing with SMBv1 is when a machine was targeted, when an exploit was run on that particular client, the malware would force the client to run SMBv1. So even though it was a Windows 10 client, it actually would force the client to go and connect to a server using SMBv1. So that's very interesting, because that means that all Windows clients are vulnerable to this attack. And there's a patch which should be on all your systems by now. This MS17-010 is a very specific update for Windows SMB, and that needs to be applied across all, because if you look at the versions here, it's pretty much all operating systems all the way down here: Windows 2008, Windows 8.1, Windows 2012, Windows 10. As you can see, it's all Windows operating systems. Critical. It's a patch that you absolutely need to get out there. In parallel, you also should disable SMBv1. We have information on our blog on how to do that. So watch out for any SMBv1 activity on your network. What we can do is that we can capture the version of SMB from network traffic, and we can report then what servers on your network are communicating with SMBv1. We can also report on what clients are attempting to establish SMBv1 connections. SMBv1 is not an indicator you have ransomware in your network, but it's an indicator that you're vulnerable, so that you need to take action, because if you don't, you potentially could get attacked. So definitely a problem you should address today, especially with your critical ones. I know you may not have full control over student laptops, but certainly any systems that you do maintain, like your file servers, make sure SMB version 1 is disabled. And all corporate laptops and clients, make sure as well that you can use group policy to roll it out. On our website there, on their blog, there is a section on the SMBv1 and how to detect it, and also some tips on how to clean it up. I've added some links in here. Why all the attention? What should I do? So there's a bunch of things you can do here and how to switch it off. You can use group policy, so some interesting tips there. Okay, back to my dashboard. So again, SMBv1, not an indicator you have ransomware, but something you should clean up. Another thing you need to watch out for on your network is any strange inbound or outbound activity on ports like 445. If you have 445 open, I mean, it's a case of, it really needs a review, because it's a protocol it's leaving your network a bit open to Windows type attacks. So I wouldn't expect to see it there. To check for it, you can use a flow tool or a tool like LangGuardian. What you need to be able to do, just if you have a tool already, look at a report, let's say like top clients. What you want to do here is specify a filter to say exclude all my local clients. So I'm using exclamation mark and then 000/8, which is my network. I want to look at any destination port 445. So what I'm saying is I want to look at all clients not local that are connecting with 445. Run a report, and I don't get any, and that's good. So I need to audit my network. If you do have results there, you need to block them on your firewall. Look at what they're connected to. To give you a better example, let's just leave the destination port as any. So you'd look at where the source is, let me see, I've got a bunch of other, we'll use this other system here, it'd be more interesting. So if I go for top clients, and if I choose the source, I've already defined it as a variable here, run that report. So we also show here the country, so I can see what clients are connecting inbound into my network. And if I see something unusual, like I've got Russia here, I could drill down and say, well, what are they connecting to? Didn't expect that, so these are the clients, this is the port number here. Time to make some firewall changes. So this ransomware issue with WannaCry, one of the actions that people need to take is audit what traffic is going in and out of your network. And when I say audit is look at the ports. So if they're using ports not 443 or port 80, look at using other ports. You definitely need to know where that traffic's coming from, what systems they're connecting to, because this is one of the ways this particular piece of ransomware spread so quickly is that it came in on TCP ports like 445 that were open on people's networks, and it then exploited the SMBv1 protocol and got on file servers. So there was no user interaction. It happened by coming in the back door via port 445. So again, watch out for strange activity inbound, especially on the Microsoft ports. And again, if you download our ransomware, our Vlan Guardian product, this dashboard's pre-configured, so everything you need is on the one screen. But again, I'm not, whole product pitch here. If you have other preferences, other tools, if you've got file share monitoring, you got your flow monitoring, you got your metadata capture like Windows XP and SMB protocols, just check out all of those pieces of data, and it's that's how you can check for the presence of ransomware, or especially the WannaCry on your network. Okay, so so that's the dashboard. It was the second topic. It's that's how you can build a dashboard. Look for extensions, domains, renames, SMB. Look for things like ransom notes and strange inbound activity. So moving on, and again, any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat panel, or there's a questions section there on the GoToMeeting app or GoToWebinar app. The next topic I want to cover is how you can monitor your WAN connections. So as I do a lot of work with school districts up and down all over the US, and before the ransomware thing hit, the number one problem that people were trying to address was, where's all our bandwidth going on our links to our schools? So we upgrade our links, we've gone from 10 to 100, maybe 100 to 5 or even more, and every time we upgrade, we don't seem to solve the problem. The link just seems to get busy. So how can we figure that out? So back to my diagram here, this guy. So to monitor what's happening on your WAN, again, back to your span port, you need to extend the monitoring to include your routers. So if your routers are going back to your core switch, which most do, you need to include that port or those ports, if you have multiple routers, into your span session. So as you can see with span ports, you can start off by saying, okay, I only want to monitor file servers and internet gateway, and then you can increase that then to monitor your, add in your routers or the VLAN associated with the routers, and that's all you need to do. There's nothing else. Just keep extending your span sessions to include the ports connected to interesting devices or VLANs associated with interesting devices like routers. So that's, to get visibility, that's all you need to do is make sure you're monitoring your routers within the data center. And again, if I flip back here to my US network diagram here, traffic from, I know there's some sites here unusual, but traffic here from, let's say, Milwaukee goes back to Denver, where then it may be routed to the internet or to local services there. So by monitoring just in Denver, we don't need to be monitoring in each location. We see the traffic going to and from Milwaukee, for example, by just doing the traffic analysis locally in Denver. So where data converges, that's where you need to have your monitoring set up. So how then can we find out what's using up the bandwidth on our links? So to do that, and again, I'm using our Vlan Guardian product, and what we have is an option in here in customization where we have the ability to create what we call report variables. I have a whole bunch of them set up already, like high school 3, high school 4, high school 5, and different links. What they are is we can create a new variable. Let's call this Denver. It's a subnet, and the value is 10.1.1.0/24, and it also uses 10.2.2.0/24. Okay, I give a description. We can call it Denver School or whatever, and save that off. Okay, so we've created a report variable. So how now can we find out what is using up the bandwidth on that particular link? So to do that, we simply go to the search panel here at the top and select Denver. Pick a time period. Let's look at the last 24 hours of usage. And then we get some detail back here and shows us, well, 55% of traffic on that link is used by file sharing, 11% is HTTP, and so on to some Oracle. But file sharing is the most active application in use on that link. Here's the top connections on that link as well. So it looks like 10.1.1.29 is chewing up a lot of bandwidth there. But file sharing, well, tell me more, show me more detail. And here now we can see the actual files that are moving across that WAN link. What I will tell you, based on my experience, firstly, the top consumer bandwidth on every school district I've seen on the WAN links is internet traffic. It's the cloud applications. So that's 90% of bandwidth I see in most schools I work with on the WAN links. It's all internet traffic, cloud services. Drilling down on the internet traffic, the top 3 domains that people access are YouTube, Apple, and Microsoft. They're beyond, like, I've yet to come across one. They're the biggest consumers. But then you have to look, okay, YouTube is obvious. We know what that is. But the Microsoft and the Apple is interesting because they're corporations. They provide lots of services. If we drill down into Apple, for example, the biggest consumer of bandwidth by a mile is iOS updates. Students get back into college, into schools after breaks, or Apple released a new update, and that happens to come out in the middle of the day when all these devices are on the network. Could be a gig per device. It absolutely swamps WAN links within schools. The Microsoft big one is the Windows updates. That's a huge consumer, but also things like their SkyDrive, their cloud file sharing. That's another big consumer there. With something like packet capture, what you can do is you can actually drill down. Oh, let me look for here. I'm looking for internet activity. So something like packet capture. Remember earlier I showed you that monitoring DNS traffic can show you the domain names people are accessing, or they may not be accessing themselves, but something is. What you can then do is tie together the domain name with the amount of data that's being sent and received to that domain. So for example, Windows updates, huge consumer bandwidth in school networks. These are the clients that are using the bandwidth. This is the domain, which is Windows updates, and if we drill down again, we can even reveal, in this case, what downloads they're getting. With Active Directory, you can also get usernames, so Helen, Bill, Dan, Laura, they're the users logged on at the time when these updates were coming down. So we integrate with Active Directory as well. What I have seen some schools do is, like, we put a trial into a school district recently. They found that the network was absolutely getting hammered with Apple updates. So what they've done is they've installed on the schools where they had the biggest problem, they've installed an Apple local caching server. So when an update comes out, it's downloaded once to the school, and then all devices within the school get their updates locally. And they've actually saved a ton of bandwidth by doing that. So they've avoided upgrades and they've maximized their bandwidth. So again, what you need to do is just completely, without talking about any specific product, go back, find out where your data converges, set up your span and report there. That gives you your source of data. Then you need to plug in a monitoring tool or traffic analysis tool like LangGuardian. Again, you can use, doesn't have to be us, it can be something else. And then once you have plugged into that, then you just filter on that data using the subnets associated with the school. What we do is, this is very popular, is that, let me just show you here again. If we look at what we were looking at earlier, Denver, run the report. So I get my top protocols. and just extend this here. So these are the top applications associated with Denver. If I go to Actions and go to Trend the Report, I'll put a name on this. Let's call it Denver School. We want to trend the total, create that. So what I can do now, and this is very popular, is to create a dashboard. I call it School WAN Links, and I just type Denver here. So Denver School, we'll add that here on the right, I think. Oops, where's it gone? There it is. Okay, so what that gives me now it takes a few minutes to update, but what it gives you then is a graph showing the total amount of bandwidth in use. In this case here, High School 2. In this case here, High School 3. Denver will look like this as well. If there's a peak like this here, we simply click on that, and it tells us at that moment what was using the bandwidth to cause the peak in activity at that point. So very, very useful, whatever tool you choose, to see if it has a graphing capability that it can graph traffic based on a subnet or multiple subnets, because you get this nice visual representation of bandwidth use. So check out if your tool supports that, and if it has drill down, like ours has drill down, so you can see, well, that was that, and what was the HTTP traffic? Well, it was these domains or these clients, and drill down in and see what domains they accessed. So it looks like internal domain actually stressed the HTTP. So that's a tip. So you can use this approach anywhere, find where your data converges, set up your spanner reports, and get a tool plugged in there that can actually process that network traffic. Amazing the amount of upgrades it can save, and just speed things up for users by just getting rid of there's even things where you might need to block or better user awareness. We had one district that when they looked at their reports, the staff were downloading, there was some sort of engineering drawings, massive things, in the middle of the day, swamped the link, and they just told the staff, look, download it in the evening when the students are gone, because it's really hurting the network. So the IT managers could make informed decisions about upgrades or about user education, or maybe even about blocking. That this site is just eating our bandwidth. We need to do something here. So when it comes to your school links, that's an ideal approach, is to use packet capture as your data source, and then you visualize that information then by using your subnet filters. Okay, so I have a question here, is how can it deal with encrypted traffic? Yeah, so it's a good question. So there are those domains I talked about earlier, your YouTube, your Microsoft, and your Apple, they're all encrypted domains. All that traffic's encrypted. However, there are certain parts of the transactions that are not encrypted. So when I go to, let me see, go to this one here. If I go to www.apple.com, okay, I typed that in, I got on the site, but when my browser was negotiating the cert here, so it's a secure connection, but when I was, let's go more information here, when my browser connected, some information was exchanged, so this certificate here could be set up so that my interaction with the site is secure. The website name here, this domain name, is transmitted in clear text early on in the negotiation, and that domain name can be apple.com, it could be iTunes.apple.com. So the initial certificate setup gives away what resource within Apple my client is trying to access. In my case, I would access the website, but if it was an iOS update, the domain name will be it's updates.apple.com, I think is it. So even if the traffic is encrypted, if your tool is able to pull that that certificate metadata from the traffic, you can still get accurate and web traffic drill down that can reveal what service within Apple or within Microsoft or any other encrypted service, what are the users actually connecting to? So you can see the subdomains, and that can be really important. Now we can see, if somebody's on a banking site and they put in their account number, we can't see the account number, it's all encrypted. But we can certainly tell you that they're on a banking site and they may be in, myaccounts.bank bank.com or whatever it may be. So you can see, okay, that looks okay. That looks like somebody's just doing some banking stuff. So yeah, encrypted traffic, interesting question. And there is still, you can still get visibility on a network if it's all encrypted by monitoring the HTTP, the HTTPS certificate setup. You can get the domain information from that. Okay, we're at the question and answers section here now, and that one just came in. So if you have any other questions, please do type into the chat panel. I did read at the weekend, just back on ransomware briefly. There was a new variant which hit the Ukraine it's called Xdata ransomware. I haven't seen it propagate around as quick as the WannaCry. It used the Xdata extension when it renamed the file, so it's something to watch out for. It talks about this article here. You can look it up yourself. But on our dashboard, let me go back to it here. The right-hand side here, especially the renaming, this here would detect the Xdata. Any Xdata activity on your network will be picked up here as well. So because the right-hand side of this dashboard is very generic, it's not specific on any one variant of ransomware. So it's the place to go if you read about something, you're worried about ransomware. But we also send out security bulletins ourselves if you're on our distribution list. Okay, so I've got a question here on some Dell switches, if it supports them. Yeah, I think all Dell switches are managed. So somebody's asking, Harry here is asking about if it supports, particular model here supports the port mirroring. So yeah, if you put in Wireshark, wiki, WIKI and switch reference, I think I spelled it wrong, but here it is here. You go to the Dell section, and looks like it's got links here to the setup. So that's, Harry, that's where you'll get your configuration guide for Dell switches. Okay, so just on the 40-minute mark, I'm going to wrap things up soon. Just want to lastly point out, if you have any worries about ransomware, or if you want to get a handle on bandwidth use on your network, if you go to our website, I mean, I have the blog section, there's tremendous amount of information there, but if you want to download a trial of our product, everything you saw me do today, that's included in the trial. It comes with the ransomware dashboard. Deploys at a virtual machine. It's not a Windows application. Everything's included. It has its CentOS kernel, but it's a wizard. It's 10 minutes to install. There's under resources, network videos, netport videos. You go to the install guides. So there's a video here. There's also documentation, but the videos are probably an easier way. How to install on a dedicated machine, put it on VMware, put it on Hyper-V, and there's some other ones here. But it's a very handy way of getting visibility, and all of the things you saw me use today is included in the trial. So you can try it out and see if there's any ransomware type activity, or see where all your bandwidth's going. That's all included in the trial. So just want to leave it at that. That I'm not saying you should download this there, but if you have interest about finding out what users are doing on your network, just try out that trial there. It's available. Okay. I have another question here from Josh. He's asking about how many probes do I need. So it's back at this diagram here. Where are we here? This one. So I can take this one offline with you, Josh. Really, again, just comes down to where your data is hosted. If you have 2 data centers, you need what we call a central manager, and you need a probe in the second data center. But again, if you want to do a one-to-one review of a network diagram, I can tell you exactly what you need. But it sounds like with 2 data centers, you just need one probe, and you can use the central manager and the probe together here as one within your main headquarters. So I think you need one extra probe if you have 2 data centers. But again, I can talk to you one-to-one, and we can work out exactly what you would need for that. All right, well, let's that's it for the moment. If there's other ransomware developments, new variants, as we learn more about detection, again, come back to our blog. You can subscribe as well. Come back to our blog. We're constantly updating that with the latest information. But go away, review your networks for any SMBv1. Review your networks for any strange activity like those file extensions, like the number of renames. Do a health check on your network. Yeah, and we'll provide more information as new variants come out. Okay, guys, everybody. So thanks, quite a few on the call here today. So thanks you all for taking the time out to join me. And I will send the recording. I'll send it by email to whatever one you use to register. And hopefully we may see you again on another webinar. If you want to reach out directly to me, you can get me. Let me just throw up my email address here, so you can get me at Dara.Delaney, but I will send you the recording via email, so you'll have my contact there anyways. But if in case you want it, that's my email address. If you have questions about your network, please just get in contact. I'm an engineer, I'm not a salesperson, so happy to answer any technical queries you have about your network. Okay, everybody, that's it for today, and thanks again, and hope to see you all again on another webinar, or maybe you could even have one-to-one conversation via phone if you have specific questions. Okay, bye-bye.